Hello everyone, this is Brooke and you're listening to the Vintage Gardener podcast, which is where I give tips and tricks on gardening, particularly if you're like me and you garden in southern New Jersey, which is zone 7A. So, I have been remiss posting podcasts, but it's for a good reason though. I have been busy setting up my new business, which is called Peonies, Petals, and Posies, and I've been getting my farmers market stuff together. That did not go the way I thought it was going to go, and I thought that I was going to be putting stuff up on the market for May. I'm now doing it in April, so things kind of got away from me, a little out of hand, as it always does. But I just wanted to come on here and do a quick care guide for the plants that I'm going to be offering at the April 13th market. And that is going to be at the Burlington County Agricultural Center, which is located at 500 Centerton Road in Morristown, New Jersey. And that is MorestowN. And the reason I say that is because in the state of New Jersey, there are two towns that have different spellings, but depending upon where you live in the state, you kind of pronounce it the same way. So that's why I'm spelling it out. So I'm going to the one that's in Burlington County, New Jersey. Okay, guys, so first things first, I'm going to have a number of peonies there. I'm going to tell you right now, the one that will not be at the market is the intersectional peony, which is Lafayette Escadrille, because it is... intersectional peonies tend to be later blooming, so that's still kind of putting on some growth. So that's probably going to be in the next few weeks. The first one up is Burnished Bronze. And so Burnished Bronze is it's a early blooming variety. It's got a chocolate red bloom. And so the Burnished Bronze is an herbaceous peony along with Nippon Beauty and François Ortegat. And so herbaceous peonies need full sun. So that's at least 6 hours, if not more. Now, Burnished Bronze could probably handle more, like closer to 6 hours, because if you have light shade, which is like, more of the 6 hours, it's going to give you the bloom won't be faded. Because unfortunately, sometimes when you put plants in, full harsh, like not a drop of shade anywhere sun, the blooms do fade out. So herbaceous peonies and even intersectional peonies are always going to be full sun. Like I said, make sure it's 6 hours at least, really north of 6 hours, because the more sunlight they get, you're going to notice a difference in the bloom. For example, my mom planted an intersectional peony and she didn't give it it's less than 6 hours, and it only has like one bloom because it just doesn't have enough energy to bloom. So, like I said, the herbaceous peonies are to be planted in full sun. Now, I do have a rubble tree peony, and I have, I think, 8 of those that I'll be bringing. And so a tree peony is a little bit different. First off, the blooms are much bigger. It's the shrub form of a peony. Now, the thing about tree peonies is that I've grown them in full sun, and that's fine. But I know from having been to Peonies Envy that Kathleen does have hers in kind of like a dapple shade situation. So with a tree peony, if you have it like, at 6 hours or slightly less, it's probably not going to be a problem because they can handle that kind of woodland type feel. But, like I said, they can do full sun. So it's up to you. Now you might notice, maybe in, more of a woodland setting, it may not bloom as prolifically as it does in full sun. But I have some I've got some in part sun to 6 hours, and they do just fine. So like I said, it's up to you. The rebel with the tree peony, it is grafted. I put it in a 5-gallon container, and I planted it pretty deeply so that, the herbaceous root that it's grafted on won't sucker and start sending up, sending up any, herbaceous foliage and plant through from the base. Just make sure when you plant the tree peony that you make sure you plant it at the level that I have, or even a little bit lower. If you plant a tree peony a little bit lower, it's not going to bother it. Once again, it's going to prevent that herbaceous rootstock from reasserting itself. Now with the herbaceous peonies that I have, plant them at the same level that I have it in the container, perhaps slightly higher, especially if you're planning to mulch, because mulch does act like dirt. And so, typically in New Jersey, you're going to want to put the plant, the peony root, an inch or two below the soil. But once again, if I'm going to mulch, I usually put it only like an inch below, so that I don't bury it too deeply, because if you bury a peony too deeply, it's going to affect the bloom. So with the herbaceous peonies planted at the same level as I have it in the pot, perhaps a little bit higher if you are planning to mulch. So that's it for the peonies. Now let's talk about some of the other great things that I have. So one of the things I got my hands on was the Elegance Italian Ranunculus, the chocolate variety. Ranunculus, first off, they have great roots. Great roots. As a matter of fact, the roots are coming out of the bottom of the pot already. And these are going to bloom in June. I didn't start them so early. I know for a lot of you guys who are in southern New Jersey, a lot of the stores already have the ranunculus out and they're already blooming. I did not start mine super early. I chose a little bit later so that you have a more natural bloom period. Typically, ranunculus bloom in June. If you're seeing it before then, it's usually flower farmers, and of course they want to get a jump on the season. But just for your own personal garden, June is just fine. Plant it in full sun. You let the foliage die back. You can pull the corms, once the foliage dies back. If you want to, save it, I'll do another podcaster video on how to save the corms. But full sun it is. And you will be happy. Ranunculus don't just have a single stem, of blooms. They typically send up multiple stems per plant. So it's one of those things you can kind of cut and come again for a little bit. So it makes it really lovely, and they just have such a gorgeous full look. Next year I have some varieties that I'm going to be bringing in that I've got to pay royalties on, but they're going to be better than even what I have this year. Next thing is Winter Elegance Deep Red Sweet Pea. So most people have never seen a sweet pea in the store because they typically don't have them, because sweet pea have a taproot. To address that issue, I grew it in an 8-inch deep tree pot. The roots are already coming to the bottom, so they have a really great root growth. They need full sun, and just make sure you have something for it to wind itself around, because they do climb. They will get about 6 to 8 feet long. The thing about sweet pea is that you definitely, especially if you want it to continue to bloom, you definitely have to make sure that you're clipping it. If you let it bloom once and you don't deadhead it, it's going to set seed and the plant really isn't going to do anything. And as a matter of fact, it's probably going to peter out soon thereafter. So definitely make sure you are continuing to deadhead it. Make bouquets, because when you're making bouquets, it's the plant is going to continue to to make additional blooms. And that way you can have it for a good long time. Once you're ready, you're done with the sweet pea, then let set seed. It's gonna make a pod, kind of like a traditional spring pea in your vegetable garden is. Once that pod is fairly dried out, then pull it off, and that's how you save seeds for next year. but it is a lovely one. It has lovely fragrance, and I'm gonna keep a couple. Actually, you know what? I have Beaujolais, so I don't need the winter red. I may take one for myself, but you know, I have probably 125. Wait, no, more than that. Whatever 25 is times 6, so that's probably 150. So I have 150, so plenty of for everybody. So the next thing I have is Katz Ruby Stock. Okay, so stock, there are different types of stock. There are biennial ones and there are annual ones. But even though they're annual and biennial ones, the thing is some stock are a single stem, and some of them grow as a spray. Now, I do have one variety that grows as a spray, but the one that I have this week, which is Katz Ruby Stock, is not a spray. And so I'm emphasizing that it's not grown as a spray because do not pinch it. Don't pinch it. You know, the sweet pea, if you pinch that, it's gonna bush up. It's gonna give you more laterals and more blooms. The Katz Ruby Stock is not going to do that. If you pinch this variety, because it has a single flowering stem, you will not get a flower. Okay, and so when you get stock, you know, regardless it's from whether or not you get it from me or anybody else, you have to pay attention to the variety, because if you pinch it, you may be in trouble. And it's a pretty expensive, especially the varieties that I have. They're expensive. They're the professional cut flower varieties. It's an expensive mistake to make. So do not pinch the Katz Ruby Stock. Okay, just gonna say it again for those of you in the back row. Do not pinch the Katz Ruby Stock because it is a single flowering stem and you will not get a bloom. So I've said it 3 times now. Okay. Last but not least, I have Morello Cherry Lupine. So lupine is one of those plants that can kind of be tricky. Like, it has to like its spot. It's one of those things you're gonna have to play around with until you find where it's happy. I have some gallery red lupine in my parterre garden that absolutely loves its spot, and then I had gallery pink that didn't come back. So it's just one of those weird things. But this is Morello Cherry. This one, it was hard to find information on it, actually. Some people said it was supposed to be a biennial. I saw a lot of people who said that it blooms its first year. Based upon how quickly it's growing, I'm going to say that it's probably going to bloom on its first year. It gets about 3 feet tall. You know, clip it, use it. If you don't clip it, it's not that it's necessarily going to affect its bloom, because they usually eventually start sending up multiple stalks. But just so you know, if you let it develop a seed head, the seed heads do literally explode. If you touch them, you're going to hear a snap. It's going to throw seeds everywhere. So if you like the plant, you might want to put it somewhere where it can self-seed and spread. So lupine can go in full sun if they're, you have a good watering system. And they can also take some shade. So if you have a part shade area, this one's fine. But I have my lupine in the red section growing in full sun, and it is just as happy as it can be, and it does rebloom during the season. Because this, I got this one for cut flower purposes. This is a much taller variety than the gallery. The gallery lupine tend to be more like 18 inches. This one is going to get 3 feet tall. So if you're going to plant it, put it kind of in the middle of the bed towards the back, not smack in the front, because it'll shade everything out. So anyway, guys, that's just a quick and dirty guide on growing the flowers. If you have any questions, let me know. Put it in the comment section. I will check it. I am on Instagram as Peonies, Petals, Posies. I'm on Facebook as Peonies, Petals, and Posies. You can send me a message through that. I do check those messages quite regularly. And next week I'll be back with the plants that I will be having at the Indian Acres Tree Farm. Most of it is probably going to be similar to what was there this week, but I do have some stock that I think I can probably bring to market next week because it should be big enough. And that's going to be the vintage brown stock and the quartet red purple stock. And one of them has some slightly different different instructions. The other thing is, I think maybe next week, which is April 20th, I will probably be bringing the Cappuccino Rudbeckia because I did have checked on that. It has gotten bigger, and the root system on it is very substantial. It's in a 4x4x6. The roots are already at the bottom, and so we'll go over talking about that because that's a first year blooming one, so that should be nice. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week with the April 20th care guide. Thank you so much for listening. Just in case you guys are new to the podcast, there is a audio version on YouTube if you like to do it, listen to it that way. This podcast can be found on Podbean, and it can also be found on iTunes. And so that's traditional. It downloads to your phone. You can listen to it while you're driving. So you have multiple ways to listen to it. So anyway, guys, I will see you next week. Thank you for listening.